The blizzard had been screaming for 3 days straight. Marcus Cole sat alone in his small shelter, listening to the wind try to tear his home apart. Outside, the temperature had dropped to 60 degrees below zero. Nothing could survive out there. Nothing should even try. Marcus was 52 years old. His hair had turned gray early, and deep lines marked his face like roads on a map. He had served in the Terran Colonial Defense Force for 28 years. He had fought in 3 wars across 4 different planets. He had watched good men and women die in his arms. When he finally retired, he asked for the loneliest posting the Colonial Survey Corps could offer. They gave him Kepler 442b, a frozen moon at the edge of known space. His job was simple. He maintained weather stations and communication relays. He sent reports once a week. Nobody visited. Nobody called unless they had to. It was perfect. His shelter was a dome made of reinforced titanium, half buried in the frozen ground. It had 1 main room, a small bedroom, a bathroom, and an airlock. The heating system hummed constantly, fighting against the cold that wanted to creep inside. Marcus had lived here for 5 years. He had gotten used to the silence, but tonight, something was different. He heard the first scratch at his door around midnight. At first, he thought it was just ice hitting the metal. The wind often threw chunks of frozen debris against the dome. He ignored it and went back to reading his old book, a paper copy of a story about a man and the sea that he had read at least 50 times. The scratch came again. Louder this time. More deliberate. Marcus put down his book and listened. The wind howled. The heating system hummed. And then he heard something that made his whole body go cold. A whimper. Soft and weak, but unmistakable. Something alive was out there. He grabbed his plasma rifle from the rack near his bed. Old habits died hard. A soldier never approached an unknown situation without a weapon. He walked to the airlock and checked the external camera monitor. The screen showed nothing but white. The blizzard was too thick to see through. Marcus switched to thermal imaging. The screen flickered, and then he saw them. 3 shapes huddled against his door. They were large, maybe the size of small horses. They had 4 legs and what looked like tails pressed tight against their bodies. And they were losing heat fast. The thermal colors were shifting from warm orange to cold blue even as he watched. Whatever these creatures were, they would be dead within the hour. Marcus knew the regulations by heart. Unknown alien life forms were to be reported immediately. Contact protocols existed for good reasons. Alien diseases could kill humans. Alien predators could be dangerous. The smart thing to do was stay inside, make a report, and let the science teams handle it later. But Marcus Cole had spent the last 5 years trying to forget the faces of everyone he had failed to save. He was tired of watching things die. He cycled the airlock. The inner door sealed behind him. The small chamber was cold, even with insulation. He heard the outer door begin to open. An icy wind rushed in like a living thing trying to swallow him whole. Marcus braced himself and looked down. 3 creatures stumbled into the airlock on legs that could barely hold them up. They were covered in thick silver fur that had frozen into stiff clumps. Ice crystals hung from their bodies like broken glass. They had long snouts filled with teeth that could probably tear through metal. But their eyes caught his attention most. Each creature had 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows of 3. And those eyes held something Marcus had not expected to see. Intelligence. Fear. Hope. The largest one collapsed at his feet. Its chest heaved with desperate breaths. Its 6 eyes looked up at Marcus, and then it did something impossible. It spoke. Please, human, we die outside. Marcus almost dropped his rifle. The words were broken and rough, clearly difficult for the creature to form. But they were words. English words. You can talk, Marcus said. It was not a question. We watch your broadcasts. Years. The creature struggled to lift its head. We come to ask shelter. Only shelter. Storm kills our young. For the first time, Marcus looked past the large creature to the other two. They were pressed close together, protecting something between their bodies. A smaller shape. A pup, barely larger than a dog, with silver fur that had turned blue-white with frost. It was not moving much. It was barely breathing. We are Valkyrie, the large one continued. My name, you may call me Silver. This is my mate, Frost, our child. Our last child. The pup made a tiny sound, weak and fading. Something cracked open inside Marcus's chest. Something he had spent 5 years trying to keep locked away. He lowered his rifle. Get inside, he said. His voice came out rough. All of you, move toward the heat vents. Now. He helped them through the inner door, half pushing and half carrying the two adults while Frost held the pup gently in her jaws. The main room of his shelter suddenly felt very small, with 3 horse-sized aliens taking up most of the floor space. But the heating system was strong, and warmth began to seep into their frozen bodies immediately. Silver collapsed near the largest heat vent and did not move. Frost curled around the pup, using her body heat to warm the small creature. The third adult, who had not spoken yet, simply lay down and closed all 6 of its eyes. Marcus stood in the middle of his shelter, holding his rifle and wondering what he had just done. He had broken at least 15 regulations. He had let unknown alien life forms into his home. He had no idea if they were dangerous, diseased, or something worse. But looking at them now, shivering and weak and clinging to life, he could not bring himself to regret it. The pup, he said finally. How bad is it? Silver's eyes opened slowly. She is dying, cold too long. No food for many days. We traveled far to find you. To find me specifically? To find any human who might help. You were closest. Storm caught us. We almost did not make it. Marcus looked at the tiny pup struggling to breathe. He thought about his wife, Linda, who had left him 3 years ago because she could not live with the ghost of the man he had become. He thought about the soldiers he had failed to save. He thought about the empty years stretching ahead of him in this frozen tomb he had chosen for himself. I am not a doctor, he said quietly, but I will do what I can. Silver's eyes held his for a long moment. Thank you, human. Thank you. Marcus set down his rifle and got to work. Marcus worked through the night without rest. He was not a veterinarian. He was not even good with animals. But he had spent 28 years patching up wounded soldiers in the field. And keeping a body alive was keeping a body alive, no matter what species it belonged to. The pup, whose name was Dawn in the Valkyrie language, was in very bad condition. Her body temperature had dropped so low that her organs were starting to shut down. She was also starving. Marcus could feel her ribs through her thin fur, like sharp stones under silk. He wrapped her in every thermal blanket he owned. He placed heating pads around her body. He rigged up a system to blow warm air directly over her small form. Frost, the mother, watched everything he did with 6 anxious eyes that never blinked. Will she live? Frost asked. Her voice was softer than Silver's, but there was a hardness underneath it. The hardness of someone who'd already lost too much. I do not know, Marcus answered honestly. I am doing everything I can. He found some protein paste in his emergency supplies. It was meant for humans, but it was better than nothing. He mixed it with warm water to make a thin soup and carefully fed it to Dawn using a tube. The pup was too weak to swallow on her own at first. But slowly, very slowly, she began to take small amounts of food. By morning, her temperature had risen slightly. By afternoon, She opened her eyes for the first time. "She sees me," Frost said, and there was joy in her voice that Marcus felt in his own chest. "She sees me." Silver had recovered enough to sit up and watch. The third Valkyrie, a male named Stone, who was Silver's brother, was sleeping deeply near the heat vent. He had not spoken at all since arriving. Marcus learned later that Stone had lost his own family 2 months ago. He rarely spoke anymore. "You saved her life," Silver said to Marcus. "You saved all our lives. Why?" Marcus sat down heavily in his only chair. He had been awake for almost 30 hours. His body ached. His eyes burned. But somewhere deep inside, he felt something he had not felt in years. Purpose. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "And I could help." Silver tilted his great head. "Most humans would not have opened the door. Most humans would have let us die. Maybe, maybe not. I cannot speak for other humans." Marcus rubbed his tired eyes. "Tell me about your people. Tell me why you came here." Silver was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to speak, and Marcus learned the truth about what had happened on Kepler-442b. The Valkyrie had lived on this moon for thousands of years. They made their homes in deep underground caves where geothermal heat kept the temperature warm. They hunted the strange glowing creatures that lived near volcanic vents. They had their own language, their own stories, their own traditions. They were not as advanced as humans in technology, but they were intelligent. They had culture. They had families. Then, 12 years ago, the humans came. The Colonial Mining Corporation had discovered valuable minerals deep beneath the surface of Kepler-442b. They set up operations quickly, drilling shafts and tunnels into the ground. They did not bother to check if anyone already lived there. The drilling destroyed Valkyrie caves. Entire families were crushed or buried alive. The chemicals used in mining poisoned the underground water supplies. The prey animals died or fled. And when the Valkyrie tried to make contact with the humans, tried to explain that this was their home, the corporation responded with violence. "They called us animals," Silver said bitterly. "Pests to be removed. They sent hunters with weapons. They killed anyone who came too close to their operations. They did not see us as people." "Did you try to contact the Colonial Authority?" Marcus asked. "There are laws about indigenous species, protections." Frost made a sound that might have been a laugh if it did not sound so sad. "We tried. We sent messages using the radio signals we learned from your broadcasts. No one responded. Either they did not understand or they did not care." Marcus felt sick. He had heard rumors over the years. Stories about what happened on frontier worlds when corporations found something valuable and local populations got in the way. He had always hoped the stories were exaggerated. Now he was not so sure. "How many of your people are left?" he asked quietly. Silver closed his eyes. 17. Including the 3 of us and Dawn. We hide in the mountains now, in shallow caves that offer little protection from the cold. We have almost no food. Every week, someone else dies. 17. Out of what had once been hundreds, maybe thousands. Marcus thought about what that word meant. An entire species reduced to 17 survivors huddled in the mountains, waiting to die. "Why did you come to me?" Marcus asked. "You said you came looking for any human who might help. But why? After everything humans have done to you, why would you trust any of us?" Silver opened his eyes and met Marcus's gaze directly. "Because we watched your broadcasts for years. We learned your language. We learned your stories. And we learned that humans are capable of great cruelty, yes, but also great kindness. We hope to find one of the kind ones. We had no other choice." Marcus stood up and walked to his small window. Outside, the blizzard was finally dying down. The white fury was fading to gray, and he could see the distant shapes of mountains through the thinning snow. He thought about his life, the wars he had fought, the friends he had buried, the wife who had left him because he could not find a way to live with the ghosts in his head. He had come to this frozen moon to escape, to wait for death in peace and quiet. But maybe there was another option. Maybe there was something worth fighting for after all. "I know someone," he said slowly. "A scientist. She studies alien species across the frontier. She has been fighting the corporations for years. If anyone can help you, she can." Silver stood up carefully, his strength slowly returning. "You would do this for us? Contact your people? Risk your own position?" Marcus turned back to face him. "I spent my whole career following orders and trusting the system. Look where it got me." He gestured at the lonely dome around them. "Look where it got you. Sometimes the system does not work. Sometimes good people have to make it work." Frost carefully picked up Dawn, who was now strong enough to whimper in protest at being moved. The pup's eyes were brighter now. She would live. "We trust you, Marcus Cole," Frost said. "You opened your door when no one else would. Whatever happens next, we will not forget that." Marcus nodded and walked to his communication console. He had not used it for anything except routine reports in years. Now he was about to send a message that would change everything. He began to type. Dr. Rebecca Foster arrived 6 days after Marcus sent his message. She came in a small medical shuttle, flying through the last remnants of the storm with the skill of someone who had spent decades traveling to dangerous places. When she stepped out of the airlock, her gray hair was windswept and her eyes were sharp with excitement. "Marcus Cole," she said, looking past into where Silver and Frost stood watching. "When you said you had found something important, I did not expect this." Rebecca was 61 years old. She had spent the last 20 years of her life traveling across the frontier, studying and documenting alien species that most people did not even know existed. She fought constantly with the colonial authority over protection laws. She argued with corporations about their destruction of alien habitats. Most officials considered her a troublemaker. She considered that a compliment. "They are called Valkyrie," Marcus said, stepping aside to let her enter. "They are intelligent. They have language and culture. And they are being hunted to extinction." Rebecca walked slowly toward Silver, her movements careful and respectful. She held out her hand, palm up, in a gesture of peace. "Hello," she said. "My name is Rebecca. I am here to help if I can." Silver sniffed her hand gently. His 6 eyes studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "You smell like truth," he said. "Marcus spoke well of you. We thank you for coming." Rebecca spent the next 2 days examining the Valkyrie. She documented their physical structure, recorded their language, and collected samples for analysis. She was gentle and patient, explaining everything she was doing and asking permission before each test. The Valkyrie, who had learned to fear humans, slowly began to relax around her. Dawn, the pup, recovered more each day. She was now strong enough to walk around the shelter on unsteady legs, sniffing at everything with great curiosity. She took a particular liking to Rebecca, following her everywhere and making soft chirping sounds whenever the scientist spoke. "She says you smell like kindness," Frost translated. "She wants to know if you have any more of the warm food." Rebecca laughed, a genuine sound that made the small shelter feel warmer. "I will see what I can find." On the 3rd night, they all gathered in the main room to discuss what to do next. Stone, Silver's brother, had finally started speaking again. His voice was rough from disuse, but his mind was sharp. "The mining corporation knows we exist," Stone said. "They have hunted us for years. If they learn that humans are helping us, they will come here. They will destroy this place and everyone in it. Let them try. Marcus said quietly. There was something in his voice that made the others look at him. The tone of a soldier who had seen too many battles to fear another one. Marcus is right, Rebecca said. We cannot hide forever. But we also cannot fight the corporation directly. They have too many resources, too much power. She pulled out a small data pad and began showing them information. However, they are not above the law. Not completely. There are rules about indigenous species. If we can prove the Valkyrie are intelligent beings with their own culture and society, the colonial authority will have to intervene. You think they will listen? Frost asked. Her voice was heavy with doubt. We tried to contact them before. No one cared. Because you did not have proof they could not ignore. Because you do not have humans willing to stand beside you and demand answers. Rebecca's eyes were fierce. Now you do. They spent the next several weeks gathering evidence. Rebecca recorded hours of conversations with the Valkyrie, documenting their language and history in detail. Marcus used his security clearances to access corporate records, finding communications that discussed pest removal operations and indigenous problem management. Stone led them to the remains of destroyed Valkyrie caves, where Rebecca collected evidence of deliberate destruction. The work was dangerous. Twice, corporate patrol drones flew near the shelter, forcing everyone to hide and stay silent for hours. Once, a ground team came within a kilometer of their position before turning back. Marcus kept his weapons ready at all times, but the most powerful evidence came from the Valkyrie themselves. Silver told stories of the old days, before the humans came, when thousands of his people lived in the caves below. Frost described the births of her first 3 children, all killed when mining explosions collapsed their home tunnel. Stone spoke quietly about his mate and 2 young pups, crushed when a drilling machine broke through their cave without warning. Rebecca recorded it all. Her face grew harder with each story. Marcus, who had thought he was beyond feeling anything, found tears running down his face as he listened. I am sorry, he said one night when it was just him and Silver sitting together in the darkness. I am sorry for what my people have done. Silver's 6 eyes gleamed in the dim light. You did not do these things, Marcus Cole. You opened your door. You saved my family. Do not carry guilt that is not yours. Someone has to carry it, Marcus replied. Someone has to make it right. Then we will carry it together. That is what Pack does. Marcus looked at the old wolf, surprised. Pack, the Valkyrie, have a tradition. Those who shelter strangers in storms become family when the sky clears. You are Pack now, Marcus. You have been Pack since the moment you let us in. Something shifted in Marcus's chest. For 5 years, he had lived alone, convinced that he had nothing left to offer the world. Now this alien creature, this survivor of impossible tragedy, was telling him he belonged somewhere. Thank you, Marcus said quietly. I had forgotten what that felt like. Silver moved closer and pressed his great head against Marcus's shoulder. It was a gesture of comfort, of connection. Marcus closed his eyes and let himself feel something other than pain for the first time in years. Outside, the wind howled across the frozen surface of Kepler 442b. But inside the small shelter, 2 species sat together in silence, and the universe felt a little less cold. The evidence gathering was almost complete. Rebecca had enough documentation to bring before the Terran Senate itself. But they still needed to find a way to get the 17 surviving Valkyrie to safety before the corporation discovered what they were planning. I have an idea, Rebecca said the next morning. But it is risky. Tell us, Silver said. Rebecca smiled, and there was fire in her eyes. We are going to make you famous. Rebecca's plan was bold and dangerous. She wanted to broadcast the Valkyrie story across every news channel in the Terran colonies. She had contacts in the media who had been waiting for years for a story like this. The truth about corporate crimes against indigenous species was not news to them, but proof was. If we release everything at once, Rebecca explained, the corporations will not have time to bury it. The public will demand answers. The Senate will have no choice but to investigate. And if it does not work? Stone asked. His voice was heavy with the weight of someone who had stopped believing in happy endings. Then we will have tried, Marcus said. And trying is better than hiding in the mountains waiting to die. They spent 2 more weeks preparing. Rebecca edited the evidence into a clear and powerful presentation. Marcus used his military training to plan the evacuation of the 17 surviving Valkyrie from their hiding place in the mountains. Silver worked on preparing his people for what was to come. The rescue operation happened on a night with no moon. Marcus flew Rebecca's shuttle low over the frozen terrain, using his old combat skills to avoid detection. The Valkyrie survivors were waiting in a shallow cave system near the southern peaks. When they saw the shuttle, several of them started to run in fear. It is safe, Silver called out in their own language. This human is Pac. He is here to help us. Slowly, carefully, the survivors emerged. Marcus counted them as they boarded the shuttle. 15 adults and 2 young pups besides Dawn. Some were injured. All were starving. Their eyes held a mixture of hope and terror that reminded Marcus of refugees from the war zones he had served in. An old female named Star limped up to him and touched his hand with her nose. You are the one who saved Silver's family? I helped, Marcus said. We all helped each other. Then I thank you, human. We had given up hope. You have given it back to us. They flew through the night to a secret location Rebecca had arranged. It was an abandoned research station on the far side of the moon, far from any corporate operations. There was room for all the Valkyrie, and supplies that Rebecca had been stockpiling for months. You planned this, Marcus said to Rebecca as they watched the Valkyrie settle into their temporary home. You knew something like this would happen eventually. I hoped, Rebecca admitted. I had been tracking suspicious activity on Kepler 442b for 2 years. I knew something was wrong. I just needed someone on the inside to help me prove it. She looked at Marcus with respect. I did not expect that someone to be a retired soldier living alone in the wilderness. Neither did I, Marcus replied. The broadcast went out 3 days later. It appeared on every major news network across the Terran colonies simultaneously. Within hours, it had been viewed by billions of people. The footage was undeniable. Corporate communications using words like extermination and population control. Videos of destroyed Valkyrie caves with bodies still visible in the rubble. Medical reports showing the effects of industrial poison on Valkyrie physiology. And at the center of it all, Silver, speaking directly to the camera in the English he had taught himself from stolen broadcasts. We are the Valkyrie, he said. We are not animals. We are not pests. We are people. And we are dying because your corporations decided our lives were worth less than the minerals under our homes. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. People across the colonies demanded answers. Protests appeared outside Colonial Mining Corporation offices on a dozen worlds. Politicians who had ignored indigenous rights for years suddenly found themselves facing angry voters. The Terran Senate announced an official investigation within a week. Corporate security forces tried to reach the abandoned research station twice in the following month. Both times, they were turned back by military ships that had been quietly positioned nearby. Someone in the Defense Force had seen the broadcast and decided to help. Marcus suspected it was one of his old commanders, a woman named Angela, who had always cared more about doing the right thing than following orders. The Senate hearings began on Earth in the spring. Rebecca testified first, presenting all the evidence in careful detail. Scientists confirmed that the Valkyrie were fully intelligent beings with complex language and culture. Lawyers argued about legal definitions and corporate liability. The proceedings dragged on for months. Then it was Silver's turn to speak. He stood before the assembled senators, a massive silver wolf with 6 eyes that seemed to look into the soul of everyone present. The chamber went completely silent. "I will not talk about laws," Silver began, his English now smooth and confident after months of practice. "I will not talk about rights or regulations. I will tell you a story instead." He told them about his grandfather, who had lived in the deep caves before humans knew this moon existed. He told them about his parents, who had welcomed the strange visitors from the sky and tried to make peace with them. He told them about his first 3 children, crushed to death when corporate drills broke through their home without warning. He told them about the night of the blizzard, when he had carried his dying daughter through the storm to beg a stranger for shelter. One human opened his door, Silver said. One man, living alone on a frozen moon, chose to help us when everyone else had chosen to let us die. Marcus Cole saved my family. He did not know us. He had no reason to trust us. But he saw creatures in need, and he chose kindness. Silver looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every senator. That is what humans are capable of. Kindness, compassion, the choice to help strangers even when it is difficult. We have seen the worst of your species. We have also seen the best. Now you must decide which version you want to be. The chamber remained silent for a long moment after he finished. Then, slowly, people began to stand. First 1, then 5, then 50. The applause built until it echoed off the ancient walls like thunder. Marcus, watching from the gallery above, felt tears running down his face for the second time in his life. The vote came 3 days later. It was not even close. The Colonial Mining Corporation lost everything. Their charter to operate on Kepler 442b was revoked immediately. Criminal charges were filed against 17 executives for crimes against indigenous peoples. The company's assets were frozen while investigators dug deeper into their operations across the frontier. But that was not the most important outcome. The Terran Senate passed the Indigenous Species Protection Act by an overwhelming majority. It declared that all intelligent alien life forms had fundamental rights that could not be violated by any human government or corporation. It created new agencies to investigate reports of abuse. It established penalties so severe that no company would ever consider ignoring them. And in a special ceremony that was broadcast across the colonies, the 17 surviving Valkyrie were granted full citizenship in the Terran Commonwealth. Kepler-442b was designated a protected sanctuary world. No mining, no drilling, no corporate operations of any kind. The moon would be administered jointly by human scientists and Valkyrie elders, working together to heal the damage that had been done. Marcus Cole stood outside the Senate building on Earth, feeling sunshine on his face for the first time in 6 years. He had never expected to return to humanity's home world. He had certainly never expected to return as a hero. Silver walked beside him, drawing stares from every human they passed. Most people had never seen an alien up close, but their expressions were not fearful. They were curious, even friendly. Several people approached to shake Silver's paw and thank him for his testimony. "This is strange," Silver said quietly to Marcus. "A month ago, humans were trying to kill us. Now they want to touch us and take pictures." "People are complicated," Marcus replied. "Most of them are good, I think. They just need to be reminded sometimes." They found a quiet park near the Senate building and sat together on a bench, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Dawn bounded around them, chasing earth insects with delighted yips. The young pup had never seen insects before. She found them absolutely fascinating. Frost and Stone were back at the temporary housing the Senate had provided, helping the other Valkyrie adjust to their strange new circumstances. There was talk of building a proper settlement on Kepler 442b, combining human technology with Valkyrie knowledge of the land. Rebecca was already drawing up plans. What will you do now? Silver asked. Marcus thought it was a question Marcus had been asking himself for weeks. His posting on the frozen moon was over. The Colonial Survey Corps had offered him early retirement with full honors. He could go anywhere, do anything. For the first time in years, his future was completely open. I have been thinking about that, Marcus said slowly. For a long time, I believed I had nothing left to offer. I thought I was just waiting to die. And now? Now, I think maybe I was wrong. Marcus looked at the Valkyrie beside him, the alien wolf who'd become the closest thing to family he had known in years. You called me Pack. You said those who shelter strangers in storms become family when the sky clears. I remember, Silver said. I meant it. So did I. Marcus took a deep breath. I want to come back to Kepler 442b. I want to help rebuild. I want to see your people grow strong again. He paused. If you will have me. Silver's 6 eyes studied Marcus for a long moment. Then the great wolf did something that might have been a smile, showing far too many teeth, but somehow still looking warm. The pack would be honored, Silver said. You have always been one of us, Marcus Cole. You have been Pack since the night you opened your door. Dawn, tired from chasing insects, came and curled up at Marcus's feet. She was twice the size she had been that terrible night in the blizzard, her silver fur thick and healthy. In a few years, she would be fully grown. Marcus hoped he would be there to see it. Thank you, Marcus said quietly, for coming to my door that night. You saved me as much as I saved you. I know, Silver replied. We saved each other. That is what Pack does. They sat together in comfortable silence as the sun continued to set. Around them, humans walked past on their daily business, barely giving the strange pair a second glance. The world had changed in ways large and small, and it would keep changing. But some things remained constant. Kindness existed. Compassion existed. The choice to help strangers, even when it was hard, even when it was dangerous, even when the world told you not to bother. Rebecca found them an hour later, her gray hair wild and her eyes bright with excitement. Good news, she said, slightly out of breath from running. The Colonial Authority has approved the Joint Administration Plan for Kepler 442b. Silver, they want you to be one of the Valkyrie representatives. And Marcus, they want you to serve as the human liaison. Apparently, you have a reputation for building bridges. Marcus laughed, a sound he had almost forgotten how to make. I spent 5 years as a hermit on a frozen moon. I barely talked to anyone. And yet here you are, Rebecca said with a smile. Funny how things work out. Silver stood and stretched his long body. When do we leave? 3 days. There is a transport ship scheduled for the outer colonies. You should all get some rest. There is a lot of work ahead. She walked away to make more arrangements, leaving Marcus and Silver alone again in the fading light. A lot of work, Silver repeated thoughtfully. Rebuilding, healing, teaching our peoples to live together. It will not be easy, Marcus admitted. There will be problems, disagreements, people who do not want things to change. Yes, Silver agreed. But we will face them together. As Pack, Dawn woke up and yawned, showing tiny teeth that would one day be as impressive as her father's. She looked up at Marcus with bright, trusting eyes. Together, Marcus said, reaching down to scratch behind the pup's ears. I like the sound of that. 3 days later, they boarded a transport ship bound for the outer colonies. Marcus watched through the window as Earth grew smaller behind them. He was leaving humanity's home world again, perhaps for the last time. But this time, he was not running away from something. He was running towards something. A frozen moon. A new family. A second chance. Silver sat beside him, watching the stars appear as they moved beyond Earth's atmosphere. Frost and Dawn were curled together nearby, sleeping peacefully. Stone was talking quietly with Rebecca about plans for the new settlement, his voice stronger than it had been in months. "Marcus," Silver said softly, not wanting to wake the others. "Yes?" "Thank you. For everything." Marcus smiled, really smiled, for the first time in longer than he could remember. "Thank me when we get home." Home. It was a word he had not used in years. A word he had not believed in. But now, surrounded by his strange new pack, heading toward a frozen moon that held more warmth than he had ever expected to find. The word felt right outside the window. The stars burned cold and bright against the endless dark. But inside the ship, there was warmth. There was hope. There was family, and for Marcus Cole, that was more than enough.